here it is. After months of long, hard work, time, and dedication, my model of the MV Puyallup is officially complete. Guys, Lego Spares Mo here. Today I'm here to show off my long-awaited MV Puyallup Foamboard model project. This is my biggest one to date. My model measures 6 feet long and about 13.5 inches wide. I'm likely never going to attempt anything quite this big again, but this was sure a very fun project to tackle. I'll start off with a quick sort of 360-degree view, and then I'll show you each individual deck and all the fun little details I've sprinkled throughout. This one is by far my most detailed model yet, and I'm very proud of it. Here you can see the full scale, the length, the sheer size of the car deck and the subsequent decks above it. How I managed to do this was actually a fairly complicated process, and it was a lot more complicated than I thought it would end up being. I ended up having to print a full-size rendition of Washington State Ferry's official drawing for the Mark II, and then tracing off. You might notice some little details, like for example this anchor found only on the number 1 end, with a little chain attached to it. And on both ends, on both sides, are these little life rafts. Also on both ends of the ferry is this cute little Zodiac speedboat. It's a very simple build made only out of 2 pieces of foam board. One that's the whole profile of the boat, and one that's just the top part. I just drew it orange with the marker. The name also sits proudly in whiteout on the sides of the ferry at the bulwarks. I wanted to give a more realistic attempt at sort of the hull, and here's what it looks like. It even features a nice little angle as you see on the side of the ferry. From the outside, we now go to the inside of the car deck. For the first time ever, my model of the Puyallup features some netting on the bow and the stern. I took some toothpicks, cut them down, and spray painted them silver to simulate the aluminum poles. Similar to all my other models, I've also painted a little smiley face on the bow and stern of the ship, respectively. I don't actually have white paint, so I had to use some whiteout. If you see anything else that's painted white, just remember I used whiteout. The Puyallup is a Jumbo Mark II class ferry, and as such has 2 full vehicle decks. Right now you're looking down the main tunnel, but you might also see these upper car ramps, and the entrance to the lower car tunnels. A fun little detail you might notice in the entrance to the lower car tunnels is the warning sign that shows the clearance. I used a little bit of sticker paper and glue for that. Now we mosey on from decks 2 and 3 to deck 4, the passenger deck. We'll start off with the Pickle Forks. This is the number 1 end, but it's not really necessary to know that since both decks are really the same. Even the Pickle Forks feature an extreme amount of detail. For the first time ever, I used this deck railing. What I did was I took an individual toothpick and cut it up into 4 equally sized segments. From there, I hot glued this floral ribbon in green, cut lengthwise down the center onto it for further detail, and I think it came out really good. I also put a couple of these life rings there, just some pieces of foam board which I hole punched, then drew a circle around and cut out, and then colored orange, again with the marker. I also put some hole punched pieces of black foam board to simulate little searchlights that they have on each end of the Pickle Forks, and also above the eye holes. Speaking of the eye holes, they also feature an incredible amount of detail. You might notice the 4 tan doors there, as well as the stairs that lead up to the sun deck. The stairs were a lot of fun to build. I just put a bunch of really small pieces, small squares of foam board, glued them on top of each other, and then shimmed it down on the end. Here it's not very hard to imagine yourself stepping onto the ferry at the dock. Believe it or not, there's also a fine amount of detail on the inside of the passenger deck as well. Let's take a look through one of the windows. Here you can see I used some manila folder to get the floor tile, some toothpicks to get each of the poles in their correct place, and I even cut out some vending machines from paper and pasted them in there. You might also be able to get a look at the maps that I put in there. Each from Google Maps. It shows the entire Puget Sound Basin. And number 2 is also not without detail, with a couple of vending machines and a coffee machine. The galley is also back there, as is the express bar on the other side. Thus concludes the passenger deck. Now on to the sun deck. I think the most work that I've ever done on the ferry model was done on the sun deck. It features a lot of really cool details and a lot of holes to cut out. And the most holes that I ever needed to cut out was for the solarium. Each solarium features around 138 holes that I needed to cut out, This one used a little less because of the antenna right here. This one, though, required a lot more detail. Each window was a carefully cut rectangle, but before I pushed the piece out, I actually used a Sharpie to get sort of that rubber seal look. From there, after all the windows were cut out, I put some clear tape in there. I would have done some fencing, but it would have been way too hard. The solariums are further detailed with little benches, each covered with duct tape to give them a green appearance, and even the black window piece in there. That window piece was supposed to initially define the non-smoking and smoking sections of the solarium. It's superfluous nowadays, and smoking is not allowed. Just a stone's throw away from the solarium is the upper passenger lounge, or library if you're a ferry nerd like me. The libraries feature a fine amount of detail as well, with more floor tiling using manila folder, and even blue construction paper, since the upper passenger lounge's features of blue tile. You might also be able to see toothpicks I use for more bolts as well. We'll take a quick little walk over from the solarium, past here, to right in front of the crew quarters, under the wheelhouse. You might notice this finely crafted name board, as well as the jackstrap, or steering guide, whichever term you prefer. Similar to what we saw in the solarium, I also have these simple white benches. The Puyallup has white benches for most of the sun deck, but green benches inside of the solarium. Here's one of the doors that leads into the rest of the passenger cabin, including the elevator, which is hidden away in here. That concludes the sun deck. Let's head up to deck 6. Wheelhouse, masts, and that funnel. Both of the wheelhouses on the Puyallup model are identical. They feature the flying bridge here, again with more deck railing, and the all-important life ring. And each one has its own cute little ship's bell. That's a bead from my mom's beading collection. This antenna is actually one of my favorite details. It features a bunch of toothpicks and a skewer for most of it, and I also decided to put some string on there. It was a lot harder than you'd think. Also using string were these masts. I actually put some flags there, an American flag, and the flag of the seal of the state of Washington. These masts are my most detailed masts on any ferry model I've ever built. You might even be able to see the little Peruno logo I was able to get up on the radar. I also used 2 ends of toothpicks that I colored black using a Sharpie, and those are the whistles. I used a bag of onions, no joke, a bag of onions to make the netting that goes around it. It's not quite like that though, it's a little more simple. Also, for the first time ever, I was able to finally capture a more realistic appearance of the searchlights up on the wheelhouses. How I did it was I took a little bit of a toothpick and actually a segment of a colored pencil that I just painted. Finally, who could forget the massive funnel? I actually really like the design of the Mark II funnel. It looks a lot like a cruise ship. It features the notches on the front and back of it, the massive flying teeth, which I actually had to cut out from a piece of paper, and the beveled plate on the top of it. That helps with the airflow of like smoke around it. Speaking of smoke, the smokestack also uses 4 straws as tight. So guys, that's it. That's my model of the MV Puyallup. I had a really fun time building this over the past like 3-4 months. Super fun, and I'm likely never going to attempt anything of this size ever again. But I'm very excited to see what models I build later on down the road. And I hope you guys really like this model. Thanks so much for watching. Elliot Legos, Ferries, and Mo out.